Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, beloved God,
Friend, beloved God,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Sri Yukteswar,
beloved Guru,
beloved Guru,
Paramhansa Yogananda,
Paramhansa Yogananda,
saints and sages of all religions,
saints and sages of all religions,
we humbly and lovingly bow to you all
we humbly and lovingly bow to you all
and invoke your presence.
and invoke your presence.
Dear Lord,
Dear Lord,
come into our hearts,
come into our hearts,
awaken in us
awaken in us
your divine love,
your divine
your
love,
divine joy,
your divine joy,
that we may share it with all,
that we may share it with all,
that we may become
that we may
your
become
perfect channels
your perfect channels
of light
of light
for this world.
for this world.
We are your children,
We are your children,
ever yours,
ever yours.
be
Be
thou
thou
eternally ours.
eternally ours.
Peace.
Peace. Amen.
And this is Brothers by Swami Kriyananda. And just to emphasize that we're all brothers, doesn't matter our beliefs, our skin color, or political inclinations, our nationalities. I've been in many countries and mixed with many men. I've shared the days of sunshine, gone with them in the rain. The fires at evening said we were brothers. The fires at evening said we were brothers. A soldier I saw weeping beside a dying friend. My officers had said I must hate him till the end. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. A man sat on a doorstep to see the children play. The gentle way he smiled there would charm your fears away. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. One day I climbed the mountain with friends of other lands. The words we used were different, but joy one understands. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Diverse le parole, la mentalità, ma dentro ogni uomo c'è la divinità che dice siete tutti fratelli, che dice siete tutti fratelli. The words and customs vary like waves upon the sea. One life beneath the surface binds everyone to me. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Then brothers, why endeavor to set ourselves apart? The fences we've been building squeeze tight upon our hearts. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers.
So let's practice this affirmation now together first in a loud voice, then in a normal speaking voice, and then in a whisper, and after just mentally, silently, to go deep in the superconscious. I am what I am.
I am what I am.
Wishing cannot change me.
Wishing cannot change me.
Let me therefore face my faults
Let me therefore face my faults
with gratitude,
with gratitude,
for only by facing them
for only by facing them
can I work on them
can I work on them
and change them.
and change them.
And now I will read to you the reading for today by Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. So the title is, Why Do Devotees Fall? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. An endlessly fascinating question is, why did Judas fall after receiving the extraordinary blessing of being accepted into the inner circle of Jesus Christ's disciples? For Judas was one of the 12 apostles, yet he betrayed Jesus and earned for himself the opprobrium of Christendom for all futurity for his sin. We find Judas reprimanding Jesus just day before that betrayal. Jesus, aware that his disciples would soon be facing, with his death, the supreme tragedy of their lives, allowed Mary to express her devotion by anointing his feet with costly ointment. This act of wanton waste, as Judas saw it, awakened indignation in that disciple. Why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and kept the purse and bare what was put therein. Then said Jesus, let her alone. Against the day of my burying hath she kept this. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. Doubt not the power of delusion. Respect it, indeed fear it, though not in the sense of cowering before it. For as Yogananda said, one is not safe until he attains Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the state of final union with God. Judas, through attachment to money, opened his consciousness to subtle influences, which may be called satanic, that drew his thoughts toward other related attitudes, the importance of worldly power, for instance, and of worldly influence. The Bhagavad Gita gives a graphic explanation of how easily the mind can be drawn downward once it begins to feed on wrong attitudes. In the 2nd chapter, Sri Krishna states, if one ponders on sense objects, there springs up attraction to them. From attraction grows desire. Desire, impatient for fulfillment, flames to anger. From anger there arises infatuation, the delusion that one object alone is worth clinging to the exclusion of all others. From infatuation, anxious forgetfulness of the higher self. From forgetfulness of the self follows degeneration of the discriminative faculty. And when discrimination is lost, there follows the annihilation of one's spiritual life. At the first thought of delusion, Paramhansa Yogananda said, that is the time to stop it. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om. Om. Om.
Good morning, friends. Thank you for joining. My name is Aaron, and this is my wife, Cora. For those who don't know us, thank you for joining us today. And I will start by sharing one of Yogananda's poems from his book, Whispers from Eternity. Teach me to conquer discord by holding my own harmony, by holding close my own harmony. I care not if the shell fire of trials scream around me, and I pay little heed to salvo shots fired in my honor. I mind not if machine guns of mischief are aimed at me to riddle me. For when thou art with me, I am safe behind the ramparts of thy protective light. Without thee, however, I would never be safe, even in the most impregnable fortress, constructed by the best skills modern science can supply. I try never to rouse the wrath of others whose tempers are fiery. No matter how they respond, however, I know that when I relax inwardly in thee, no one's anger with me can ever touch me. Bless me that I may heal the shrapnel wounds of this harmony in the lives of others. Teach me to drive out darkness from their minds and to prepare them for thy triumphal coronation in their hearts, O King Light. Bless me that I may bring a salve of sweet smiles to all melancholy souls, soothing showers to revive dry, arid minds, centuries of light to banish from their consciousness all the thieves of gloom, nectar of peace to all sorrow-parched hearts, and the glow of kindness to dispel dark cruelty everywhere. Teach me to subdue discord by calm waves of my own harmony. Teach me to conquer insincerity with sincerity. Bless me that I may overcome any habit of idle criticism to others by turning censure against myself instead. And teach me finally to give the nectar opiate of thy peace to all tormented minds, that they may find rest in thee. A colonel in the army started looking at things and lifting them up and looking at it and saying, no, that's not it. And he would go and take a look at something else and he'd say, no, that's not it. And this went on for days until finally his superior called him to his office and tried to reason with him and say, what's wrong with you? And he would just keep going around the office lifting things and said, no, that's not it. And over here, no, that's not it. Until his superior was completely, he lost his patience. So he took him by the arms and said, Colonel, wake up. What's the matter with you? And then he's just held like that. And he looks at his badge like that and he says, no, that's not it. And so finally gives up and sends him to the psychiatrist. And same story in the psychiatrist's office. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. The psychiatrist tries to do everything to remind him of his childhood and try to get him to talk about his problems or his life at the war, and nothing helped. Nothing worked. And so finally the psychiatrist himself gave up as well. And so he writes a letter and gives it to him and says, this is a letter to, free you from all your duties due to mental incapacity. So he takes that paper, looks at it, and said, "That's it." And this world is just like that. This is a metaphor to say that the soul knows what it's looking for. He wants to say, that's it, the soul knows. But we're looking outside of ourselves on, like the Bhagavad Gita reading was saying, on sense pleasures and so on. And we must realize, of course, that the only satisfaction we will ever get is from soul union with God. And thus that saying of India, neti neti, not this, not that, only divine communion with God will give me that bliss. But there's something else that's very subtle during these times of great upheaval and confusion, that the only temptation is not just sense pleasure. And I want to talk about it after, but about sense pleasures. But I want to address also the need to acknowledge that there's a big enemy trying to drive us to delusion, right? And it's the power of delusion itself, this conscious force that Yogananda talked about, Satan, that is constantly trying to bring us farther and farther away from our home in God. And right now it's disguising itself as many different things so that your heart gets filled with anger and fear and separation and anxiety. And you'll see it if you turn on the news, if you go onto Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you'll see people are just fighting each other. Everyone is separate from everyone. There's this political party against that one, and this scientist against those scientists, and this entrepreneur against this billionaire, and the people against everyone. It's just a jungle, if you have seen it. And even what's happening now with the protest, and I'm not saying that it's not right to fight for a just cause. At times of righteous war, God may call you to go on a war and fight, literally, not metaphorically, but really fight. But what's important is the attitude. Even in the reading we saw it, that it's the attitude that matters the most. And even Gyanamata, I think it was her that she said something along the lines of, when everything is wrong in your life, the only thing you have to look at is your attitude, or that's the most important thing, or something along those lines. And so, again, it's not that defending yourself or your rights or whatever it is, or your health, anything, it's not important. But the important thing is the attitude, that we not fall into the trap of Satan, of cultivating fear and hatred and separation from one another. It's so sad, really, to see how everyone is just hating each other and fearing each other. So we must really realize the power that this satanic force has in order to be able to fight it. And so I invite you to, next time you feel this restlessness in your heart, whenever you see, whether it's your acquaintance or neighbor or a political leader or a mad scientist or whoever it is that awakens this anger or fear or hate in you, to do the peace and harmony prayer. You know, the peace and harmony prayer is to say, Lord, fill the name of the person with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. You say it for about a minute or 10 times, and then, Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, and for about 15 seconds or 3 times. And actually, let's do it together. So I will say it, and I will keep quiet during the name so that you can say it. And it doesn't have to be just a person. It can be a whole situation or a whole group of people. So let's do it together, just so that you get in this motion, so that you start this motion, and then next time somebody honks at you in the freeway or something, it automatically, Lord, fill this person with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. So let's do it together. So think about this person or situation or organization, and open your heart to love them impersonally but unconditionally. And let's start. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Yogananda said, we must be practical in our idealisms. So this is a very practical thing to do, to use this technique and other techniques that we have. And it is important to be prepared on a physical plane, so do whatever you need to do, whatever you think it's needed to do, to be prepared for hard times. But most importantly is to be prepared spiritually. You know, Swami would share the story about these 2 monasteries that were untouched completely after the atomic bombs were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they were within the radius of the bomb's effect. And it's just that when you're centered in God, nothing and no one can harm you. Because ultimately the soul has no death, no birth, no death. The chant says, right? No birth, no death, no caste have I. I am He, blissful spirit, I am He. So this is why we have to be spiritually prepared. So when we are tested, and again, I want to share, this is a very intimate personal belief that we will be tested. We are ready to meet those tests that will make us closer to God and bring us closer to our own reality, to realize who and what we really are. And I was just listening, I can't remember if it was Asha or Devi, talking about how the world used to be like in the shape of a cigar, so to speak, where most good and not so good, or not so good and not so bad people would be in the middle, make a big chunk. And then at the end would be like very evil people and then very saintly people on the other end. But now she said the shape is kind of reversed, where there's very little space to not be wishy-washy, like not too good, not too bad, like I'm good sometimes, but I cut corners here and there. There's not much space for that on these times of trials. So you really have to take a stand and decide, am I evil or am I saintly? And those tests will be happening. I follow this man on YouTube. who teaches how to garden using mulch or wood chips. And he's a very devoted Christian. He's a beautiful soul. And he was talking about his friend, who's also a very devoted Christian. And his friend, he said, had a dream that he was in his house and somebody comes to his front door and pulls a shotgun at him and says, "Give me your food." And this man looks at him and says, "Brother, you don't need that shotgun. Put it down. Come in here. I'll give you whatever you need." And that is the attitude that we have to keep in mind. That it's not about the actions that you perform. It's all about the attitude with which you perform. And then you become those attitudes, so you don't have to think about it in the moment. Because in those moments of great trials, you can think what's best and what's not. Somebody asked Swami, if I was in a concentration camp, and if I could, I can't remember how it goes, but something along the lines of, would it be best to sacrifice my own life for the sake of others, or what is the right thing to do? And Swami said, well, this is a question about intuition, and it's not a particular question about that particular situation, but it's just intuition in general to know what to do in a moment by moment basis. And this is developed, of course, by daily meditation. And if you're a Kriyaban, by really holding on to your practice, you know, that vow, it says, I will practice faithfully and regularly. So this has been translated as twice a day, every day. So I invite you to do that. And even if you don't have Kriya, to try to do that, to really go within and practice that love to others, that compassion toward others. This is the best time to practice compassion for others. And on that, I want to share from the Bible. It touches me a lot that both Luke and Matthew reflect the same speech or the same teaching. And I love them both so much. But I will only read Matthew. Oh, so it says, Matthew 5:38 and till 48. You have heard that it has been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, that you resist not evil. But whoever shall smite you on your right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue you at the law and take away your coat, let him have your cloak also. And whoever shall compel you to go a mile, go with him too. Give to him that asks you, and from him that would borrow of you, turn not you away. You have heard that it has been said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he makes his sin to rise on evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans the same? And if you salute your brothers only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be you therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. So with this, I want to close this section with this reading of really being aware that there is a big opportunity for you to develop that compassion and love for people who think opposite of what you think, and people who do opposite things of what you do, and people who disagree with you, and people who persecute you and despitefully use you. it's time to do, as Swami said, that the only thing that would change or save the world or something like that would be to love heroically. So this is such time, my friends. Now, I wanted to touch on another point that I mentioned early, which is sense pleasures, because the Bhagavad Gita talks about it. I want to stress again that I think about the attitude. I believe it was Yogananda that said, or at least here in Ananda, we hear it many times, that if you can't resist the temptation, and if you have to go and do it, and quote unquote sin, then sin with God. Invite Him into your consciousness and say, God, I can't help myself. I have to do this, but I'm here with you and you're here with me, and just let's do it together. You can't hide anything from God. And Cora was sharing with me yesterday how at the end, it doesn't matter what you do. Jesus said, God will send rain on both the just and the unjust. God will love you no matter what. So it's not about hating yourself for being who you are. And it's not also about hiding yourself from yourself. You know, like the affirmation, I am what I am, wishing cannot change me. Let me therefore face my faults with gratitude, for only by facing them can I work on them and change them. So this is what I want to share with you today, to have a plan, an intention, a strategy to overcome those tendencies that will lead you in the direction of separation from God. And this is very important, that sometimes a little thing doesn't look bad or too bad. It's just this little thing, it's not bad. And it might not be bad at all, or it might be so tiny that it almost doesn't matter, but it takes you on a different direction, and that's what matters. It's not about what step you're taking, or how long or big it is, but the big thing is what direction is taking you towards to. That's what you have to ask yourself every time, every day. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita, how it starts. On the battle of Kurukshetra, what was the outcome? So every night, like the reading today from the affirmation from self-healing, introspect and say, who won? The light or the dark? What direction did I take? Am I moving closer to God or away from God? And I want to share now a very practical thing that, how many of you, I bet, know that Swami Kriyananda gave up smoking, and he talks about his approach to it and how he gave up smoking, that he would be very determined, and then every time he would smoke again, he said, I just haven't succeeded yet. And one day he had built up enough willpower that he did it. And I actually want to share a personal experience that I gave up smoking too, and it was very similar, and I didn't know anything about Yogananda or Kriyananda. It was a few years before I came into the path. But I did it in a very similar way. It just had a different perspective, but it was, I guess, the same strategy. And even alcohol also, I gave it up too in the same way, which was, I said, okay, I want to give this up. And then I would spend, let's say, 1 month without drinking or smoking. I did it at separate times. First I gave up smoking, I think, yeah. And so I would spend 1 month, and then after a month I would smoke again and say, wow, the victory. It was a victory because I spent a whole month without smoking. And then I tried, and then 3 months, and I smoked again, and then it's like, victory, I spent 3 months without smoking. So every time I smoked, it was a victory because of the time that I had spent without smoking. So just to share with you that you can come up with all sorts of creative ways to overcome this negative tendencies that, again, just come back and really hit home. personally believe we're going to be tested, and so it's good to start now, develop this attitudes. So it's not to say, oh, I'm lost because I have all these bad attitudes and this bad tendencies and bad habits. What hope have I? No, it's, oh, what can I do now? And how can I be effective and constructive and just turn in the direction of God? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, if you are in the lowest of the low, it doesn't matter if you're there, if you are starting to go in the right direction. So with this, actually, I want to close and just invite you to be very aware of all the different masks that Satan will use to try to ignite your anger, your fear, your feeling of separation from others. And Lord, fill this person with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. And then also to try to overcome all those tendencies in yourself. Joy to you.